Well, hello, fellow art nerds. Um, it has been a very emotional couple months, so I'm going to read a lot so I can try to stay on task. Art has always had a way of finding me. Mostly my adult life has just mostly been commission work, one or two paintings a year when somebody wants a portrait. I hate portraits, but lots of people want a painting of themselves. I know lots of narcissists. Just kidding, just kidding. But I was doing other things. I was a pastor for a long time. I worked with adults with developmental disabilities, worked at our local teen shelter. But mostly I was being a dad, and that has been the greatest joy of my life. I loved art, but I was not missing out. I kind of always just thought that art would be later when I get to retire, whatever that looks like. But I really had there was no rush. I had no sense of loss. I could just paint when I wanted to paint. Um, in 2022, Emily and I decided to start a gallery in our boutique. Not the ideal location, but let's try something new. I put one show together in that space so that honestly, just so that we can show artists what we were capable of doing in that space. And when I was finished putting that show together, I was hooked. And I just, for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I have to do this right now. Um, it was also the start because prior to that, I had only done what other people wanted me to do. It was kind of the start of me finding my own voice and feeling like I had something to say or something that I wanted to talk about. The show was called Dichotomy, and it's what I've continued to call my abstract work. Um, it's all about the dichotomy of life, how life is both beautiful and broken, good and bad, perverted and pure, selfish and selfless, both full of joy and extreme pain. It's great when we get a bit of reprieve from the pain um, so that we can enjoy the joy, but oftentimes um, joy and pain is a tragic marriage of the miraculous and misfortune coexisting. In the last 6 weeks, um, joy and pain have been in tandem in our life. 6 weeks ago, all three of my kids were thriving. My daughter Gracie just graduated a year early. She's working and saving up for her car. Noah's in the sheet metal program. Carter was working at Hillside Gardens. Um, I was just finishing up my first show in my new studio. Um, I finished up with a splash of Axneo Karai, finished in the Calvados cask. It was delicious. Um, in the middle of July, right after, and it seemed like everything was great. In the middle of July, my son Noah lost 4 of his friends, including 2 of his best friends, in a horrible car accident. It completely wrecked my son and his sister and his brother. Also, Emily and I got to come here shortly after that news and hear Hannah's talk that was absolutely beautiful and absolutely right on time for what we were going through. My kids had 3 weeks of hospital visits, open casket viewings, funerals, fundraisers, services, lots of mourning. I went with my son Noah one night to the crash site where family and friends set up a memorial. Plastered on the light pole were photos of 3 young men: Gabe, aka Gibby, Brian, aka Yaya, and my son, who we've always affectionately called Boa. Feelings of grief for these boys and their family and my son collided with my own feelings of gratitude that my son was standing next to me. This month started with an art show here with my friend Jasmine, in the space of two women that I absolutely adore. I even sold some art, so take that, art show. um, Later that same week, right after the show, my son Carter told me that those boys who had died had reached out to him that night and that he was supposed to be with them. Um, Again, his feelings of grief and gratefulness and guilt all collided. And again, I felt the same grief and shock and gratefulness that he wasn't in the car that night. Emily and I had a very unexpected opportunity to go to Guatemala to see some of our artisans that we work with. It was unbelievably special. Several days into that trip, I received a call from my daughter. Another friend who she's known since grade school died in another car accident. We cried and talked about pain and how life isn't fair. In Guatemala, we saw unbelievable beauty and poverty. We ate really good food. We met really great people, saw amazing art and architecture, and we drank some damn good rum. When we returned, my oldest was put on a 72-hour hold. The loss of his friends has just crushed him. This Friday was my daughter's 17th birthday. Needless to say, she didn't really feel like celebrating. Sunday, she went to her friend's funeral, and yesterday we ate chocolate-covered strawberries. Today is my son Carter's 22nd birthday, and celebrating is the furthest thing from his mind right now. For all of us, I mean, this is the dichotomy of life. It's a tragic marriage of the miraculous and misfortune coexisting. Since I started this particular style, this is my fourth collection, and I named this particular one I Had a Plan, because haven't we all? I'll just read my statement. Most of us at one time, or many, felt like we had a rock solid plan, a plan for our future, our relationships, our career. I've had many plans in my life, and for the last 10 years I sold carpet. That most certainly was not the plan. During this time, my life was spent behind a wheel and on graph paper drawing floor plans. My wife Emily and I also have had plans and dreams, and we held to them tightly even after an unfortunate fire took our beloved business. Again, as we worked to put the pieces together and spent so many hours dreaming and scheming on graph paper, drawing floor plan after floor plan, 23 to be exact, as we searched for a new home for our business. While I wanted this collection to reflect in some way the countless hours spent on graph paper, both rebuilding our dreams as well as the unplanned career, this series truly is about our need for each other and our need to adapt. We all have hopes, dreams, and plans, but we must learn to adapt, pivot, and color outside the lines a little bit. Finally, this is a thank you to the people that I love and a reminder that we are all indeed beautifully dependent on one another. This show, I did 5 groups of paintings. I wanted them all to be very different in technique and execution, but I wanted them to communicate with one another. So I have behind me, So Close, So Far Away, Can I Borrow Your Eyes is the self-portrait of a narcissist in the corner. Coloring Outside the Lines are the very bright ones. She Had a Plan is the black here. Streets, the corner ones in gray. And then I did one last one, just I had to throw in, and it's called It Ain't Just Black and White. So I'll kind of talk through all 5 of those collections. So behind me, So Close and So Far Away, is about how close, alike, and connected we all are, and how similarities end up being glaring differences because our perspectives are just a little different. I tried to communicate this through color, texture, assembly, um, and the depth of canvas. Um, I've weaved kind of grids and text and numbers throughout all of them just to represent, um, if you have any dreams or plans or anything, you tend to have, a notebook by your bed or, wherever you're constantly jotting down and scheming. So that's kind of what all the numbers represent. Can I Borrow Your Eyes, which is the big one in the corner. That one is very special to me because when I started, when I moved my studio into the basement at Yobel, it was so incredibly special to be working where my wife works because I've always been colorblind. I say color confused. Um, but at the time, I was working on a city series. So I would take my own photos and use those as reference, and then I would paint those. And so I knew what I was looking at, but I couldn't translate what I needed to use for color. And so I'd holler up and, babe, can I borrow your eyes? And she'd run down and she'd help me translate. The best way that I can explain my experience and us working together is if you've ever talked to somebody that speaks another language or grew up in a household that speaks another language, and you say, oh, well, do you speak Spanish too? And they're like, no, I understand it, but I can't really speak it. That's kind of what it's like for me. I understand, but I can't really speak it, so I need Emily to come down and help me translate. And so that's what that piece is all about. The bright ones, Coloring Outside the Lines, these are all about how we all have to adapt and pivot throughout life. While we may stick to our plans, they just might not turn out the way we planned, and that's okay. Usually when I'm doing these types of series, I would do a sketch on the computer that's very clean and crisp, and you're just taking a circle and putting it on something, and then I use that for reference, and then the entire painting is kind of adapting and freestyling. So these guys are a ton of fun for me. She Had a Plan. Do you all know Marissa White? Lovely, lovely woman and incredible artist. Also a trader because she moved to New York, so whatever. Anyways, when she was in college, she built these frames where this black series over here, she built these frames. They're just raw, and she asked if I could do something with them, and I was like, oh man, yeah, heck yeah, I've never stretched canvas. So I had a plan to do this whole series with them, and I stretched one canvas, and I hate stretching canvas. It's the absolute worst thing in the world. So I never did anything. And so anyways, when I was doing this, I'm like, oh, it would be really cool to do something kind of unfinished but finished with these. And so this series is called She Had a Plan. And it really is just about, there are lots of things in our life that we're the ones that are supposed to start it, but we're not the ones that are supposed to finish it. Perhaps we're the visionary, but not quite the executioner. And so during the show, I had somebody here, and he really liked this, wanted to take the whole thing, but didn't really have the space for it. Wanted to talk about what it meant. And he's like, well, I don't have the space for it. So what if I just wanted one or two? And I was like, that's the whole point of the show. While I had a plan of what this is supposed to look like, the whole plan is for it to change and be whatever you want. And that's kind of why I like abstract art so much, is like, we can listen to me like ramble about what this meant to me, but at the end of the day, you might like this because it's a pink. Like, at the end of the day, this pink painting is so cool. It doesn't have to have any meaning at all, but it just speaks to you because it's pink, you know, and that's the beauty of art, and specifically abstract to me. Um, Streets are the ones in the corner that kind of look like concrete. When we were, my friend group were kind of young adults, just kind of fresh out of high school and trying to figure out life. We lived in this big house. It was kind of like a frat house. Everyone's just partying and making music and making art and playing video games, and it was a mess. But one of our friends, playing video games one night, something happened bad in the game, and he's like, "Oh, streets," and that kind of, for our friend group, kind of became like a saying. Like if something was hard, you'd like, "Oh, streets," and then it became, "Oh, streets are rough," and someone else was like, "Yeah, mad potholes, yo." So it just became slang for us. But really, that's the meaning behind that to me. Really, is that life is truly hard for sure, but it also is incredibly beautiful. But we do have to be intentional about looking for it. Otherwise, we get stuck in the hard. And then the last piece, it ain't just black and white, is again just how we live in the gray. It's not black and white, but there's beauty within it all. And that's the whole collection. So questions? No. I wanted the shapes. I wanted them to be 4 different pieces that like connected in some way. And I was moving through it and thinking about actually hanging it, I felt like it would be a stronger piece if it was one whole piece. It also would be just practically easier to hang and display, because that's pretty hard to like figure out measurements and all that while you're hanging 4 different pieces rather than just one. So it kind of evolved. I mean, the theme from the beginning was, I had a plan, and it kind of echoed just life in general, but what I wanted this show to be all about. And then, as I started to go, because really this was where I started, and then I kind of wanted to kind of echo, like, I had a plan and continue to adapt and have different looks and textures and representation of that. One of my favorite paintings, it was actually called City Series, City Center. It was a bench down on Bijou and Cascade, and I just couldn't for the life of me figure out the color, and I thought I really had it, and I put it down, and I just want to throw up. It just wasn't right. And so she would come down and, no, that's definitely not right, and she'd help me out. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.